This should be the cold open. The hard editorial line that I think we need to enforce for this episode is we don't know if the Switch 2 sucks because nobody's got one. So, like, when I say fair. Nobody, I don't just mean the three of us. I mean literally nobody.
Are we all recording right now?
Yeah, I am.
No, I am.
Rachel has joined the chat.
Hey.
Well, yeah, I guess right now it's Pandora's Switch, right?
Yeah.
None of us know if it's good or not. Well, it's going to be fine. It's just the Switch again.
Yeah,
so
honestly,
it costs you more money.
Yeah.
It's Pandora's Switch, and inside is what, like hate, greed. What were the things inside the box? I'm pretty sure it was like the box was
I
filled
thought you were
with...
just... I'm right. Sorry, you actually making like a Pandora's reference. I just thought you were just like really dunking on the Switch too.
But I feel
it's like all evil, but then like hope is the thing that's left.
Well, no.
As I recall.
What stays in the box? Oh, that's what's a little lame ending.
Yeah, right.
I should rewrite that one. Boo. Whoever wrote that. Socrates? Is that one of Socrates? Did Socrates write myth?
No comment.
No one's here for this.
No comment on any sort of myth tales.
The only person who's probably bothered by me saying that is on this podcast. Rebecca, how wrong am I?
Quite wrong.
Hello and welcome back to Indiventure, a podcast all about the wonderful world of indie games. My name is Liam Richardson and I'm joined as ever by my two wonderful co-hosts, Rebecca Jones.
Hello.
And Rachel Watts.
Hello.
Rachel Watts has been mean to me, listeners. She's probably going to cut it out the edit. She might cut this bit out, but this is my cry for help. This episode is set to go live on the 12th of June 2025, which means that by the time you're listening to this, the Nintendo Switch 2 has been out for an entire week. At the time of recording, we're still 2 days away from its release, which means I can only dream of the experiences you, dear listener, may be having in the future with your shiny new console. Perhaps you've been playing some Mario Kart World, of which previews imply might not be very good. Or perhaps you've been playing some blurry-ass Cyberpunk 2077 for reasons I will never understand. Or, more likely, you don't own a Switch 2, but this is the fourth podcast you've listened to this week that's doing an episode about it. Sorry. In our defense, this episode isn't about Nintendo's Switch successor. Instead, it's about their handheld hybrid that started it all. Today, we'll be looking back at the original Nintendo Switch, focusing specifically on its reputation as the definitive platform for indie games. We'll be exploring why indies gravitated towards the platform in the first place, how a select few indies became associated with the Switch, and why, thanks to the arrival of some competitors, the Switch potentially lost its crown as the de facto indie machine. But first of all, we'll be asking the question, Rachel, why do you hate the Nintendo Switch so much?
I don't. Maybe I do.
I'm hitting you like, this has the energy of Newsnight for some reason.
Oh, shit.
And you're the
Could you
guest.
imagine?
Like,
I
Just answer the question.
yeah, it's really simple. Don't deflect. Why do you hate the Switch?
Look over there.
Great, brilliant. Is that the, have you seen I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson on Netflix?
No.
Oh, have you not seen? It's so good. It's like the best sketch comedy show ever. There's one bit where he's pretending to be like a right-wing commentator on like Fox News. And he's like, if I don't like what I'm saying, I'll just pretend to be on my phone. And people are like, well, why do you think this? And he's like, oh, just gets his phone out and just like sits on it quietly. And they're like, is everything okay? He's like, yeah, it's fine. Just got some messages to respond to. That'd be you on Newsnight.
I will respond to these allegations about hating the Switch and Switch 2 and everything. I don't know if I hate, but I don't know if I'm in love or even would call the Switch an indie machine. Ooh.
Oh, well, that throws my episode plan out the window.
Hello?
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Hello?
This has been Indiventure.
But I'm sure we'll wade into those reads. A lot of biblical and Greek visuals this episode. I was thinking of Moses in the reeds. That's fine. No, it's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. Was it Moses in the reeds? As a baby?
Yeah, he was hanging out in the reeds, right?
Yeah.
Chilling out.
I've seen Prince of Egypt. I fucking know. Have you seen Prince of Egypt?
Loved Prince of Egypt.
So
I went to a Catholic school.
good.
Of course I've seen Prince of Egypt. I've seen it like 1,000 times.
Well, I don't know, because isn't it like I didn't think a lot of Catholics were like into Prince of Egypt because it was like, I don't know. Do Catholics like Prince of Egypt? Or I'm really fucking this up here. I just thought, you know, if you were raised Catholic, you wouldn't like, or your family or like teachers and stuff wouldn't like you seeing depictions of like Bible stories in, is it Disney? No. It's like, I just thought that would be all censored. So I'm surprised.
I mean, this is the same Catholic school that you're probably not wrong, but in my Catholic school, they also used to show us Life of Brian from a very young age in the RE lessons.
That's pretty epic,
you know,
not gonna lie.
They had some, you know, complicated opinions about what women should be allowed to do with their bodies, but they had a pretty good sense of humor about it. So, I mean,
and then you watch good films, so all good.
That's Catholic school for you.
What were we talking about?
I don't fucking know, mate. Right. So
this really
the
went
Switch.
somewhere.
This is anyone's first episode. The Nintendo Switch. How do we feel before we dive into looking back at the system that is no longer with us? As we all know, old consoles are thrown in the big bin in the middle of the country whenever a new one comes out. How do we feel about the Switch 2? I know you two aren't getting one. I'm getting one. We're actually getting two delivered to this house on Thursday because Yoli's getting one as well.
Incredible.
Wow.
Any interest in the Switch 2, you two?
I will get one eventually, but when I was asked if I was willing to get one for work, I said I don't see the need to yet, based on what I'm working on this year.
That's fair.
And
no Love and Deep Space port for the Switch 2.
The dream. Hey, if they can start porting to PC and PS5, that would be amazing, because this emulator is killing me. Anyway, side note. But yeah, it's because my beat at work is visual novels and RPGs, most of those are going to be cross-gen anyway. There's actually very few things that are going to be exclusive to the Switch 2 in the next 6 months to a year. And just because of like various things going on, I was like, I've never bought a console day one in my life, and so help me, even 6 years into this career in games journalism, I don't intend to break that streak for the Switch 2, if I'm being perfectly honest. So
you never bought a console on day one?
So, never. Literally never. In fact, PS5 is the first one I've had that is... Oh, no, actually, no. Switch and PS5 are the only two I've ever had that are even the base models. I've usually had one of the later releases, I guess.
So sensible. So much, like, yeah, of course. Buy the one that works and not the ones that are all defective. Because all launch models are defective, and I buy them anyway because I'm an idiot.
Yeah, so probably going to talk about this in a minute, but I wanted to mention the side note that I love my Switch, I really do, and we'll get into why later. But I bought it in February 2019, which was about 6 weeks or so before the base model was like became obsolete because it was replaced by the next like low-key hardware update, which I didn't know at the time. But it always makes things interesting because Nintendo have some very strict rules about you not reviewing any of their games on the original base model, which means that I've never been able to work on it like in a fully official capacity on a Nintendo game, or I haven't been able to really.
Did not know that.
Yeah,
I didn't either.
That feels like a bit of a hot scoop.
Yeah, so they. This is okay to say. We might have to cut this out. I don't know. Over the last few years, they've requested specifically that you not review any of their games on an original base model Switch that was released for like, I think it was actually like August 2019. And you know, the reason they said is like, oh, just like it's an older model, it's a little bit like.
If you put Tears of the Kingdom in there, it will explode and kill your family. Do not put Zelda near that base unit.
Here's the thing, and like legit, we might have to cut this out.
That's wild that they say that.
But like, friend of the podcast Hayden has informed me, and I do trust them on this, that the real reason is that there is a really well-known way to hack a base model Switch. And that's why, and that's basically the thing that was, you know, patched out, or whatever it would be, the hardware equivalent of patched out with the re-release, the soft re-release before they did all the OLEDs and the, you know, the other the lights and stuff. And so that's apparently why. But yeah, it was a whole saga. So basically, VG247, the site that I work for, we have spent years mailing Switches to one another so that whoever was currently whoever was currently working on a Nintendo game could actually play it on an approved model console.
That's so Nintendo. I love that. That's a really fun fact. Also, don't worry about talking about emulation. I've spoken about emulating Nintendo games on this podcast before. I'll take the fall. Don't you worry about it.
I mean, anyway, I just thought, I don't know. I don't know how libelous that is as pieces of gossip, to be honest, but I do think it's interesting, especially now that we're at the end of this hardware generation, to think about like some of the ways that it's interacted with the industry. Because I mean, like, do people know about all the secret other Switch store and things where you need to get all of your like biometrics put in before they'll let you look at the pre-release stuff? I
didn't know that either. What?
The biometrics bit was a joke, but yeah, there's a.
Oh, but there is a second eShop.
There's like a lot of hoops you have to jump through to get review copies a lot of the time.
Damn.
On Switch, specifically for Nintendo games.
Thank God I didn't have to do that as reviews editor. Yeah. Fuck that shit.
But, for like in-house Nintendo developed stuff, not just for anything on Switch. So it's like...
Oh, wow. They have a secret eShop that works. We'll circle back to this later on.
I never said it worked. I never said it worked.
It's worse. Rachel, Switch 2? Any interest?
No. I just think I looked at that price and went, nah, I'm good. But even then, like...
Yeah, it's fair.
Well, again, we keep saying this. We'll get into it. But like, the Switch has never really been a go-to console for me in terms of anything, because I've not really been into big Nintendo games. Like, all the indies I could play on there, I'd rather play on PC instead, and Steam Deck, which we'll get into. And so, I just never felt... I saw the Mario Kart World whatever trailer with the cow, and I thought that cow is really cute. Potentially, I could get the Switch 2 for this cow specifically. Was he riding the boombox bike? Oh, it was so cute.
I think so.
But no, not
is that cow worth £425? Yeah,
probably £400, but
right. Okay, so the extra 25 is pushing it a little bit.
And that's guaranteed you're gonna have to buy that cow. Guaranteed you're gonna have to buy that cow. I don't know, I don't know how Nintendo add-ons work, or do they do like accessory?
They don't really do character packs quite as much as most, like a lot of other big developers, to be fair.
Wow.
I mean, Smash Brothers being the exception there, but you are right. I think the way they do DLC is like, it's not microtransactions. It's you pay us £15 and you get 30% more on top of your game.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah. They've got that going for them. They shouldn't be charging £75 for Mario Kart, but yeah. They've got that going for them.
Yeah, so no. I just think the price is egregious. The price of games is egregious, so nah, I'm good.
That's fair.
For now. I could change my mind. But yeah, no. I'm like Rebecca. I think every console I've gotten has been secondhand. Or like whenever a new one's come out, I don't think I've bought a console day one, apart from maybe the Wii. Because me and my sister were really, really keen into it. But I'm the same. I've never bought something... Did the PS5 come out when I was working at Play? No, it came out before.
No.
So yeah, I've never bought a console day one apart from the Wii, which was literally decades ago. But I've waited until like another one's come out, and then I've always secondhand CEX bought. Like all my Switches have been from CEX. A lot of my DSs from CEX. My Xbox, apart from the Steam Deck. But yeah, so no. I won't be buying it.
I think that's probably the sensible way of doing it, like I was saying before. Although I do have incredibly fond memories of dragging my mum to the local shopping centre at 5 a.m. to pick up my Nintendo Wii the day it came out, and standing in queue with a lot of people in their 30s, and then getting that copy of Twilight Princess and Wii Play for the second controller, and Red Steel.
You've bought two. So why don't you get into why you decided to go for it?
Yeah, so I'm an idiot and I'm paid too much in sausage roll money. So that's why. The reason why I'm getting, Yoli just fancied one because she plays a lot of handheld games, and she was and ahhing between a Steam Deck and a Switch, and she landed on the Switch because she likes Nintendo stuff. I am a diehard Nintendo fan. I have always been there day one for them. I was a day one Wii U owner. So I've been through them, I've been through it thick and thin.
You've been in the trenches.
You've
been in the trenches.
I really have been in the trenches, yeah.
Christ.
I was the guy when Mario Kart 8 came out on Switch, and everyone was like, this new Mario Kart's good. And I'm like, it's not new. Some of us have been playing this on a slightly larger handheld that felt worse for 5 years.
Oh, man.
But yeah, nothing makes me feel more like an excited kid like new Nintendo hardware. And I have a feeling that might be different with the Switch 2 because it doesn't look anywhere near as exciting and as interesting as previous Nintendo handhelds and consoles. But yeah, I don't know. I've got to get it. I've got to play Tears of the Kingdom in 4K 60 FPS, and that Mario Kart I think looks pretty good. Looks like a good time.
And not for the indies?
Well, let's get into that. Good segue. Right. Play the sting, Rachel.
Here I go. Then it will go here.
Is that you walking towards the computer to...
I'm pressing the giant play button.
That we keep in front of us at all times.
And the emergency eject button when one of us doesn't like what the others are saying, which we haven't had to use yet, but we all have.
We've had to use it. No.
We just eject ourselves from the conversation.
It's next to a similar button that says pee pee poo poo chat that you hit and it electrocutes me specifically.
No!
Stop talking about it.
Illegal. Pee pee poo poo chat, illegal.
So, the Nintendo Switch was revealed in October 2016, following months of very tedious rumours. I don't know whether you remember the whole NX rumour mill that was going on in 2016.
No, babes. I think you were locked in.
I was locked in. I think Nintendo fans were so desperate for something that wasn't the Wii U that any scrap of information they could get was much appreciated. So there was loads of speculations that Nintendo's next console would combine both their handheld and home console divisions into one single machine, and obviously that turned out to be true. However, reception, I was reading about this today and I'd forgotten, reception to the system's initial reveal was like hugely negative. And loads of analysts predicted that it was going to be a total stinker, the same as the Wii U. Yeah.
Wow.
Analysts at the time were like, no, they fucked it. There's no way that this is going to work as an idea. So I'd love to know what your initial thoughts were about the console. I know both of you sounds like both of you came to the system a bit later, but can you remember when you first heard about the Switch, what your first thoughts about it were, and what eventually made you buy a Nintendo Switch?
Want to go first, Rebecca?
Yeah, sure. I think I can remember. I remember because rather geekily, and I hope charmingly geekily, not like creepily geekily, back in the day before I was in this...
Creepily geekily.
Oh, that's really pleasing to say.
Cute.
That is. Creepily geekily. Like Ned Flanders.
Creeping and geeking.
It sounds nicer. Now the problem I have is that option sounds like the fun one, but actually it would not be. Anyway, I mentioned on this podcast before that before I was a games journalist, I was very, very into Outside Xbox and Outside Extra, who are now like colleagues of mine. So obviously let's not get too parasocial with it. I don't think I got too parasocial with it. I just liked their gaming content a lot. But yeah, I remember them doing, they kind of covered, because they, as is, the standard policy at Gamer Network, we don't really cover rumors. So there was kind of like nothing with them. And then the Switch was actually announced and they were covering it a lot and they were going to previews and there was like a lot of hype from that coverage. But at the time I wasn't working in the games industry. And so I was like, I knew I was definitely going to get one at some point. But I was like, well, I don't have to get one on launch in like 2017. So in the end I waited and I got one eventually, as I say, February 2019, which would be just because that's my partner's and my anniversary is February. So quite often if there's a new console out that we both really want, we'll get it like as a joint present because we've been together for years and years and years. And like his birthday's a week after our anniversary as well. So I'm like very pro that I'm not going to get surprise presents. Like let's get a joint present because otherwise I have to think of two lots of ideas in 6 days.
That's fair. Yeah.
So we bought the Switch for our anniversary in 2019. And then we kind of still didn't know what to do with it. I think for the first year that we had it, we kind of bought a few games, like played the odd thing on it. But it didn't really click for us until Animal Crossing New Horizons, which was obviously like the game of like early lockdown. That was when we really locked in and started, like literally we both played it every day for over a year, I think. And it was just... So that was when we really got into the Switch. And I would say like for me, because I said, top of the episode, I was like, I love my Switch. And that is definitely true. But when I talk about like loving like a hardware, a system, like a console, for me, it's like, it's only as good as my best experience with the software on that platform, if it makes sense. I don't have a lot of I don't have a lot of, I could say I generally prefer PlayStation to Xbox, is a statement I can make. But at the same time, I'm not like super devoted to any hardware system particularly. I wait, and like with the Switch 2 as well, I know exactly when I'll get a Switch 2. It's when a game launches that's a Switch 2 exclusive that I so desperately want to play that I'll start, which is how I've ended up with almost all of my consoles.
Duskbloods, right? Big Duskbloods head. Can't wait for that.
Oh God, Duskbloods! I'd already forgotten that exists. In fairness, I know about a lot of games, and that is going to be someone's absolute jam. It's really fascinating. But yeah, I mean, I think honestly, the saddest thing for me is that the thing that would get me to lock in on Switch 2 at the moment would be a Ring Fit sequel, because I play so much Ring Fit.
Oh yeah, you do,
yeah, you do.
Even more than an Animal Crossing sequel, which I'm like, I've had my fun with Animal Crossing. I kind of hope they don't do another one, because it will then become a work obligation. But like,
good point.
Another Ring Fit game would genuinely get, because I've like pretty much like rinsed the current one to death, and I would genuinely love to see that get a sequel, because it is. I mean, I don't love it. I hate it. I tell it off every day for how much it makes me hurt and tells me nonsensical things, because the person who translated it clearly hasn't actually seen the original Japanese instructions in context with what you're meant to be doing with your body in the moment. But
funny.
I love it though. Like, because it's made me healthier, and we have to kind of respect it for that, I suppose.
Rachel, what about you?
So I remember being excited because I've always been a Nintendo handheld girly. And also, I lied earlier. I was day one on the 3DS. I forgot about that.
Absolutely fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you had to play Steel Diver or whatever came out when that came out.
Oh my God. The release games for that were fucking awful, because
Abysmal.
I had Nintendogs. So that was my release game for it. But Henry, who also pre-ordered 3DS, his options were Street Fighter 5, I think. Steel Diver. Like, it was awful. But I'm pretty sure that I was okay, because I think it was Nintendogs or something. Or I think it was called something different. Anyway, so I was day one for that. So I actually, because of being a Nintendo fan, I was excited. I think I remember being excited. I hated the way it looked. I was like, thank God they released new colors, because I feel like Nintendo always release a butt ugly console and then they get prettier as time goes on. Which is 100%. With the 3DS, I was so happy that I just got a blue one that just wasn't like, I don't know, grey or silver or whatever. So I remember being excited. But I still didn't buy one, because again, I was just kind of waiting to see. There wasn't any day one things on the Switch that I really was quite locked in for. But, and this is funny looking back, it's almost like, because I was into games like Nintendogs and Professor Layton, I was like, oh, the Switch. So if I love these series, I should probably get the console at some point, because at the time,
oh, that's rough.
I'll get the new Nintendogs and I'll get the new Professor Layton.
That Ace Attorney 7 that was announced for launch,
So I mean, when I came into the Switch, it was quite a while later, because otherwise I just would have been waiting for nothing, apparently.
Yeah.
And then it's just indies. That was the reason. Portable indies. That was the reason I bought mine. I was just like, damn. And I got the light as well. Here she is.
Oh,
that's nice.
I got the light. Nice.
It's a good size. I thought the first one was just a bit big. So I like that they made it smaller. I think that was the other reason. I think a friend of mine had it, and it was really good for multiplayer. I thought that was so cool. But because I don't play a lot of multiplayer games, I waited and then got the cute color, and then obviously Animal Crossing as well. So that's kind of, I was excited, but maybe for the wrong reasons, because the games that I wanted never happened. well, now we know Professor Layton's happening, which is the only reason I've kept this, is for Professor Layton.
It's just for Professor Layton.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
sense. She would have been gone a long time ago. Bless you. Anyway,
it's interesting how many like top-selling Nintendo handheld games didn't make the jump over to the Switch, considering one of the best things about the Switch for me as a Nintendo fan is, like, outside of F-Zero, pretty much every single dormant Nintendo franchise has come back in some form or another.
Yeah.
And because it's on Switch, has sold over 1 million copies, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that they never did even if it was like a 3DS port of Nintendogs and Cats Complete Edition or something. It's quite surprising they never just did that, because I reckon that would have sold gangbusters anywhere. So
I pray every day. I pray every day for an accurate Nintendogs adaptation that isn't ass. And it's never going to happen. I said that, Professor Layton, though, because it could happen. And
yeah, it could.
Oh god, yes. So and they seem to be like, oh, you know what? As well with Ace Attorney as well. I think that was something else has obviously made a big one. That I was like, I played all the Ace Attorneys. I played them all on Nintendo consoles. So I was like, you know, if I want to replay them, I can do them on this.
Yeah.
So
well, that replaying them turned out correct, because you can replay all of them on that thing now.
Yes, I actually did play all of them on Switch. That's in my notes. Is the sort of accompanying statement to the Indie Machine, the alternative name that I've heard for both this and the Steam Deck, is the Visual Novel Machine. Yeah. And that's definitely true.
Yeah, that's for me, calling it Indie Machine, I would call it Indie Machine first and foremost because of that point. Because of the indie visual novels from Japan that are getting ported over to this console.
That is quite a big
That's
thing.
Number one for me. I think all the other indie arguments, which we get into, have almost, I don't know, there's no other option to play indies portably before the deck. So making it like, it's the best way to play indies. Well, to be honest, it was the only way to play indies on the go. And now you have Netflix and mobile, and now you have the Steam Deck, and now you have the Playdate. I just feel like it's becoming a bit...
It really had a moment.
But it's got the visual novel market. That's where
it does.
It rocks.
I would argue, to be honest, that, like, okay, so Switch is where I've played all of Ace Attorney. I played all, except for the one that never got re-released, and I think it's this crossover, which I'm currently playing on my 3DS. But other than that, like the 10 non-crossover games, I played them all on Switch. I played most of Danganronpa on Switch, with the exception of the first time I played the first game because I got it cheap on PC, and the one that they'll never release on Switch because it's so family unfriendly.
Is that Despair Girls?
Despair Girls, yeah. I played Doki Doki Literature Club Plus on Switch because when I was like, I want a physical edition because it's cute, the Switch was the obvious place of the like 3 core consoles at the time. But I would say now, even for me, the Steam Deck is slightly becoming, for like not massive, like, you know, those are some of the biggest visual novels and franchises of the last like 20 years. For things that are a little bit smaller, I think the Steam Deck now has even got that like as quite a strong alternative, because if you think about like, there's a much wider selection available on Steam than there is on, and you know, it's like if you factor in the fact that you can run itch.io through the Steam Deck with a little bit of like sanctioned jiggery pokery, then it just means that you've got suddenly an actual huge expansive selection of, you know, visual novels available. And in fairness, I would counter my own point by saying the Switch visual novels still run better on Switch.
That's what I was going to say.
You've got 10 times the choice on deck, and so they're both good. If you love visual novels, having both is great. But yeah, it also, you know, runs into the same issue, is that visual novels get discounted on Steam all the time, and there's barely any discounts ever on the eShop. So there's a lot of pros and cons to both, for sure.
We should definitely circle back to the Steam Deck of it all, 100%, because I think there's a lineage here, and it was interesting when you were both talking there about, Rachel, you said there was no way to play indie games handheld, and it's an interesting point because there kind of was, and that was the PS Vita, and I think the PlayStation Vita was absolutely the indie handheld before the Switch came along, but it wasn't anywhere near as successful as the Switch. Obviously, it was a bit of a failure.
I've heard something interesting about that as well. I read a bit into the porting, why a lot of these visual novels were getting like ported to Switch. And apparently the sort of the architecture for the PSP, the PS Vita, and the architecture for the Switch are so similar that porting is apparently quite the dream experience.
That's interesting.
Apparently they work really nicely together, and that's one of the reasons why obviously PlayStation not releasing a handheld hardware for like 15 years is another. But yeah, I think there was almost that. It was in a good position, the Switch, because of how strongly it was like picking up what the Vita kind of left off.
Yeah. Which would make sense because by the end of the life, I also had a PlayStation Vita, and by the end of that thing's lifespan, the only things I was playing on it were indie games and visual novels, because they were the only two things that were being released on it.
Yeah.
So we circle back to when the Switch was released, 2017, March 3rd, 2017. I remember taking a day off work, and then the Switch didn't arrive until 8 p.m. that night, so it was a waste of a day off.
Oh.
Bit of a nightmare. But as soon as press went hands-on with it, the narrative around it changed completely. People absolutely loved it. The Switch only launched with 9 games, both retail and digital, which is quite surprising to think of in hindsight. These obviously included the likes of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, 1-2 Switch. You remember that piece of shit? That's got a sequel, if you can believe that.
No.
And this really made me realize how long the Switch has been around for. One of the launch games was a Skylanders game.
Oh my God, not Spyro.
Like Toys for Life was still a thing at that point. However, what's more interesting for us is that 3 of those 9 were indie games. So we had Snipperclips, which was a Switch exclusive, our beloved Snipperclips. Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, which was the complete version of Shovel Knight. That game began life on 3DS and found a lot of audience on Wii U, and then had its complete all DLC included edition on the Switch. And Fast RMX, which was a Wipeout F-Zero style indie game. That was great. I played that a lot as well. Oh. And I was trying to look at like what the story of indies were on the Switch. And in 2017, indie games did kind of dominate the release calendar that year. So Nintendo released Mario Odyssey that year. They released a couple of smaller games. But if you like, this list of indie games is kind of wild. So we had SteamWorld Dig 2, Golf Story, Snake Pass, Stardew Valley, The Binding of Isaac, and Enter the Gungeon all came out in 2017. And then in 2018, we got Hollow Knight, Celeste, Inside, Towerfall, Into the Breach, Undertale, Gris, and Owlboy. Remember Owlboy? That was like the biggest game in the world for like a little bit of time there. But all these huge games were dropping for the Switch at a really decent cadence when there wasn't like a huge library of games on the system, but it was letting you play them on a bigger screen. You were able to unclip those controllers and play some of them multiplayer. And yeah, I guess indies just became the dominant genre on the console, while Nintendo was prepping up these bigger AAA games, and third parties were realizing that they, could probably make a bit of cash from this as it started to sell. It sounds like we all did play indies on the Switch. I know I have a lot of fond memories. I used to run 7 out of 10, my YouTube channel at the time back then, and I used to play tons of games on the Switch for that channel to review. And I remember playing the likes of like Ollie Ollie and Stardew Valley a lot, and it really became this perfect place for these indies, a lot of which I'd already played on Vita, to be honest, but the form factor of the Switch just felt so much nicer. But yeah, let's circle back to that conversation we we're just having. And why do we think the Switch became the place for indies for a while? And if we do think that, why? And I'm interested, the reason I'm phrasing it like that is because Rachel, you said that you weren't sure if you did think it was a great place for indies.
I think for me, it's almost like coming back to that point of like, it was the best because I just feel like it was the only other place. I know there was like Vita and stuff, but in terms of like popular handheld console, I just feel like it was just being one of the only ones. I almost feel like, of course, it was going to be the place to play them. And I don't mean that in like it's just hard. It's hard because I think at that time, and correct me if I'm wrong, did Nintendo do a lot to support these indies on the Switch, or did they just allow them to release?
So I was reading about this today. I had a vague memory and I was correct. So
because that's for me the crux of the argument. How much did this platform? How much did this platform do to support games that were being released on it, smaller games? Because I don't know.
So what's interesting is technically, the support was grandfathered in from the Wii U and the 3DS. So Nintendo had already made a huge push for indie games on the 3DS and especially the Wii U, because they knew they weren't making games for the Wii U by the end of that thing's life cycle, right? They were prepping Breath of the Wild for the Switch and Mario Odyssey. So that's when they launched their Indie World showcases to go alongside their directs. And they were the first major platform holder to do these dedicated presentations just for independent games coming to their platforms. So we had 3DS ones, we had Wii U ones. So it makes a lot of sense as to when the Switch comes out, they already had these existing relationships with a lot of indie game developers and publishers, which I think is how we get the likes of SteamWorld Dig 2 coming out so fast on Switch, because they'd already had an existing relationship with Image and Form with previous SteamWorld games on the 3DS and Wii U. So yeah, they were doing a huge amount, especially at launch, to make sure that they were working with indie devs to get their games on the platform.
Nice. Because I know they did the Direct. But yeah, again, I just wasn't, I think in terms of when I think back, all those games you mentioned, I didn't play any of them on the Switch. I just played them all on PC. Even like stuff like, oh God, Owlboy is really taking me back. But I didn't really think of the Switch, because I didn't have one at the time, but I didn't even though it was doing everything to support in terms of Direct and stuff, I still didn't see it as like a console for indie games. But probably because I was all on PC. So
yeah. I mean,
I'm out the loop.
Sort of my experience of this was a kind of moment that really solidifies my experience of this. And again, I was really late to the party. I was like 2 years late to the party with the Switch. And this is probably part of it. Was I bought Hades and I bought it on PC. Like, played a bit of it on PC, like instant regret. I was like, I just got a Switch. Why didn't I buy it on the Switch? This is clearly the natural home for it. And to be honest, if I'd done it the other way around, I probably would have double dipped. But as we said, because of the fact that you can double dip on Steam because it'll be like £1 in a Steam sale at some point. Yeah. Whereas it's always the prospect of doing it the other way around is a bit more daunting, especially because I didn't, I didn't have like quite as much money to play with at the time. When just like buying new games, and I didn't get like, I had no insider lines to the good games and stuff. And so for a while I remember just being like, oh, I really, really wish I got Hades on the Switch. And then, but like to go back to it again, Steam Deck came out and really leveled that playing field. And that was kind of my major feeling, was that like there was a moment where I didn't have, I made a list, right? I went and wrote out all of the indies that I own on Switch. I make it about 15 that I have on Switch, which is a pretty decent chunk of my Switch library, and more than I thought. It's probably about half my Switch library. But yeah, my feeling was like, oh, if I jumped on this earlier, I would have probably appreciated it as like a really good home for indies more. Whereas, I just defaulted to buying everything. And then obviously I went to work for RPS. And so again, I was defaulting to getting everything on PC. But I don't have that regret now, because now I have both Hades games on my Steam Deck. And I'm like, actually, it worked out all right. I will say, though, multiplayer indies, that's for me. And maybe because I bought it with my partner specifically to play games together, multiplayer indies are where the Switch really landed for me, which we can talk about in a bit.
No, we can talk about that now. I think I agree. The fact that it had two controllers that popped off, and then you can hold them in your hands, like, Nidhogg 2 down the pub, Towerfall, like these were things that we used to do all the time back in 2017, 2018. Like the form factor and the ability to play games multiplayer, I think was a big thing for certain indies, definitely.
Oh yeah, I mean, for me, the indie game on the Switch, in my opinion, is Untitled Goose Game, which is... Yeah,
I was going to bring this up. It's interesting. Yeah.
Mick and I played that together a lot. It's, and it's just, it feels like a natural home for something like Untitled Goose Game, because, it's got that kind of like, aesthetically, it fits the Switch in terms of like its... graphical requirements. You can play Untitled Goose Game is as beautiful on the Switch as it is on any other platform. So there's the kind of that side of it. There's the fact that the kind of cutesiness of the Switch really like vibes with the cutesiness of Untitled Goose Game. And there's the fact that, playing it on two sets of Joy-Cons just was a lot less, like it just felt a lot more accessible somehow to have that as a, because our other option would have been, again, PC, and then we probably would never have played it multiplayer, which would have been a real shame, because, like, Goose 2, iconic,
Yeah, Goose 2 is
podcast
iconic.
favourite. Fourth host of the podcast, Goose 2.
Goose 2.
There's, I think one thing that probably is worth mentioning as well is I also played a lot of games on PC at the time. Like, the Switch wasn't my pure indie console. Like, a lot of games still came to PC first at that time, as was the case with all of these. And quite often I would play them there, if they weren't day and date on Switch. And I think we're probably like a little bit, and our listeners are probably in the same bracket as us. I think we're like early adopters of these things. And to be on the cutting edge, I think you have to be on PC with these things. I think that's always been the case and continues to be.
I think that's very
But
true.
it's probably worth mentioning that honestly, and this is a really boring answer, but I do think it probably is why the Switch ended up becoming the place for indies. It's because fucking everyone bought one, right?
Yeah.
That's a good point, yeah.
As of December last year, it sold 150 million units. So it's the third best-selling console to date. It's only behind the PS2 and the Nintendo DS. And I didn't realize this. The Wii sold 101 million units. So it sold 49 million units more than the Wii. I didn't realize it overtook it.
Holy crap.
So that kind of install base, of course indies are going to feel like the huge success stories on there, because especially in the early days when the Switch was popping off, you put Stardew Valley on there and it's only one of 30 games on the eShop. Of course it's going to sell thousands and thousands and thousands of units.
That's such a good point.
I think something I'm grappling with as well is that, but how many of those people bought a Switch for the indies? Probably not a lot of them. Few. So I think for me, that's where it comes back to. It's like calling it the indie handheld. It's for me. Just the indies are a bonus. It's not the reason why. Well, that's wrong. I bought it for indies, and I'm sure many people were like, "I want to play Stardew Valley on the go." So that's like a reason. Yeah. But I just can't see many people being like, "I would like to play." Like I'm buying a Switch because I specifically want to play indie games on the go. I'm not sure, and that makes me sad.
Well, the problem here is we can't. I mean, it would be lovely, and like maybe actually this would be great if we can like maybe get test the waters in the Discord, like set up a poll or something. Because I would love to know. There have got to be people who got into indies through the Switch, right? Who were like, "Oh, I'm going to play like Mario Odyssey," but we are not the people that ask that because of the position that we came to it from as people who were or would soon be in like the games industry. Because another thing I was thinking about is one of the reasons probably that I never really took up the Switch as an indie platform so much is because, like, peek behind the curtain, when we get game code, if it's not on PC, it's quite an event. It's quite shocking if we get offered something that doesn't default to PC, even if it's on multiple platforms. A lot of the time, like, obviously a lot of indies do launch on PC first and then port to other platforms, which is like an understandable way of doing things. But even like, unless it's a massive AAA game, most publishers will assume you want PC unless it's specifically tied to another platform as well. And so, I mean, I've got, as I say, I've owned a Switch for six years now. I have maybe 30-ish games on it. I have like 250 games in my Steam library because that's where people just shove games at you when you're in the games industry.
But for sure.
And so there is that kind of barrier for us, but I would love to know what other people's experiences are. Because,
I would too.
It's a question I can't answer.
Because I think that's like, and I totally get what you're saying, Rachel, but I do wonder. So when I was looking at this earlier, the 25th best-selling game on Switch is Stardew Valley. It's the first time an indie game gets into the top 50. It's sold 8 million units just on Switch.
Hell yeah!
Now, it's sold more than some Nintendo games, like Kirby and the Forgotten Land is underneath it there, Super Mario Party, Link's Awakening remake sold less copies than Stardew Valley.
Wow.
That would imply to me that a lot of people bought it for Mario Kart, and then they were like, oh, what's this cute farming game that everyone keeps talking about? And I think, like, as a gateway, that's quite cool. Like, if that's the legacy that Switch has, is that a bunch of people found out about indies through it? I don't know. I think that's maybe worth. I would think that's worth celebrating.
I like that.
Yeah. Please tell us if you play more indies than you did before you had a Switch.
Because of the Switch.
It was part of the reason. I would genuinely love to know.
So let's get to the bit that I think we're all probably itching to talk about. Did it change? And the answer is yes. Let's talk about the Steam Deck.
I feel really bad because I knew that this was coming, and I feel like we still completely like steamrolled your very well thought out plan by jumping all over the place.
Steamroll it. No, I think it's important to mention it because it's so vital to the story. I think, Steam Deck comes along. Steam Deck's only sold 4 million units, which I think is interesting. A fraction compared to the Switch. And I do think there's probably something to bear in mind here that, again, we're in our bubble. Everyone we know has Steam Decks. They're not mass market machines, but I think the Steam Deck is representative of a shift in the market that we now have handhelds that aren't just the Switch out there. Hybrid handhelds as well.
Yes.
And yeah, I'll put my hands up here. I hadn't touched my Switch for nearly 2 years until recently when I started to, mop up some Nintendo games, because the Steam Deck was everything I wanted from a handheld. It was more ergonomic and had all of my games on there from Steam. And Rebecca, you're totally right. You're not paying the Switch tax anymore. Indie games on the Switch are more expensive, but on Steam, they drop in price all the time. And I think that's been a huge factor to just taking some of the air out of the conversation more than anything.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, like my experience was I hadn't played my Switch in ages, was thinking, well, why do I buy a Steam Deck? I don't even play my Switch. Took the plunge anyway, and then just Steam Deck just absolutely decimated any sort of attention I had for the Switch. Just because all the games I had, again, me personally, all the games I had for the Switch were just doubles up of what I had on PC, and now I just didn't even need to bother doing that anymore. So I had something that was kind of portable. The Switch is the Steam Deck is barely portable with how fucking huge it is. But in terms of like being in front of the TV and lying in bed and stuff, that's kind of portable enough for me. But yeah, it just completely eclipsed the Switch for me. A console I already wasn't playing. I was just like, damn, this is how I should be playing the Switch, and I'm not. This is how much I've fallen off.
That's what I thought when I got my Steam Deck.
I'm sorry.
I'd be interested because I think probably by the sounds of it, see, I play my Switch and my Steam Deck about equally probably still. Yeah. But I have a few big games I'm playing on the Steam Deck, the Switch rather. Mm-hmm. They have such similar names when it's late. I have like a few big long-term games that I'm playing on the Switch, and then like I dip into like all my little 6-hour indies on the Steam Deck. Really is how I've ended up playing over the past sort of couple of years since I got my Steam Deck. I think that I like, again, bringing the perspective of someone who's still very much in both of these like hardware systems. My point of view, I can still see where the Switch 2 might obviously overtake the Steam. Like, it's sales wise, it's pretty definitely going to overtake the Steam Deck. Yeah. But even in terms of performance, the thing that I've been finding with the Steam Deck is it's not, I love it, but it's not fantastically optimized. Like, playing Wonderstop earlier this year, it had about 90 minutes of battery life from full charge to, oh my God, I got to find a charging point, playing like Wonderstop on Steam Deck. And like, I understand why. It's actually quite a big game world that's all loaded in simultaneously, and the graphical settings are quite high and it's quite demanding. But the Steam Deck's not that old. And it was still kind of shocking to find, and I'm playing, go into this later, but I'm replaying Baldur's Gate 3 at the moment on Steam Deck, and again, I've got maybe 2 hours, which is just when you compare it to the Switch, which is a bit more, even now, my old Switch, it has threatened to die on me a couple of times because I played Animal Crossing so freaking much during lockdown, and yet still, it's still going, and like when you sit there and play, you could get, a decent few hours out of the Switch even at this point. And I do think that like, if Switch 2 has more robust hardware, most people are only playing like 4, 5, 6 games on loop, right? And so I can, I understand completely where the popularity of Switch comes from, where it's just like, my battery lasts longer, it's got the 6 games I want to play. Yeah. And like, even in terms of indies, I mean, like talking about Stardew Valley is very relevant here, I think, because Stardew Valley is the indie game you can play pretty much forever, and people do. Right. I mean, not the only one, but it's representative of like a minority of indie games that do have that like forever game kind of baked in a way that a lot of indies just kind of don't. I love me a good 4-hour indie. I really, really do. But I think, the Steam Deck being the home of the 4-hour narrative indie, and the Switch still being a natural home to the 100-hour just play it and play it and play it indie, I can see why both have their place and why the Switch still has legs in the marketplace.
I do think that like performance is an interesting conversation point though, because I feel like something shifted around like the time maybe like Cult of the Lamb came out, was maybe when a friend of mine really wanted to play it and they bought it on Switch, and performance wise it was quite ropey. Yeah. And another friend of mine bought Thank Goodness You're Here last year on Switch, and it ran badly. And it's kind of wild that we're getting to this point. But I even find like, I tried to play a little bit of Promise Mascot Agency on the Steam Deck, and it didn't run very well. I had to play it on PC, like proper.
Really? Ooh.
And I think we're kind of reaching the point now where, the hardware in the Switch was, good for the time because it was handheld, but it was still basically a PlayStation 3 on a little bit of juice in it. And the Steam Deck is like a PlayStation 4 with a little bit of juice in it. And, these things are never that powerful by
Yes.
the nature of like what you're saying, Rebecca. They've got to have a battery life more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think as well, just like the aging nature of the platform means that maybe some people have like not turned their nose up at it a bit, but maybe even like Joe Public is starting to think, I don't know if I actually want to play this, because I've seen reports that it might be a little bit ropey on there or something.
Yeah, I guess it's just for me. I'm just this is a bit of a side note, really, but I'm still surprised at how fast like the Steam Deck feels like it's aged in 3-4 years as much as the Switch has in
I
double
agree.
that.
Yeah.
And it feels a lot more untested. It feels more like, again, most of the people I know who have a Steam Deck are industry people anyway, and it just feels like that was always more a proof of concept to get industry hype, maybe.
Yes.
And like then the next generation Steam Deck will probably be the more fine-tuned version that launches to a wider public. I mean, it's huge as well. As Rachel says, it is barely portable, whereas
Big.
but yeah, I mean, at this point, 8 years is about right for a console generation, typically, traditionally, right? So I'm not surprised that newer games are running kind of badly on the original Switch. Oh my god, I got one of the indies that I have on there is Close to the Sun. I don't know if you remember that one.
Oh yeah.
I think I do.
And
With
yeah,
the
that was
bird spaceship thingy. That one?
the BioShock, like that the people were like, we never played BioShock, and I was like,
Oh
right, whatever.
that one. Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking of the one you were thinking of, Rachel, but no, I know what
I
this
was
is
thinking
now.
of Race the Sun. I don't know. Close to,
Yeah.
that was the one where the people were like, don't ask us.
But yeah, that was.
Oh dear.
Yeah. That was my eye opener for the fact that the Switch could not do photorealistic graphics, because I just went in like, this will be great, and like not really knowing much about the hardware, and then I was like, okay, so it was fine. It was, it wasn't like an unplayable experience, but I was like, I just coming off PS4 and being like, this looks a little ropey on Switch. Yeah. So it's not that surprising, but yeah, I do think to bring it back around, I do think the Switch 2 could really eat some of Steam's lunch there, just because, if they've in any way like improved on the hardware of the 8-year-old version, which I hope they have, it's
Yeah, I think it'll definitely
sure
have juice in it for the next 5-6 years at the very
I
least.
do believe it does, from what I'm not a hardware person. I just kind of, all of this talk of hardware has been very vibes based, as you can probably tell if you know anything about actual hardware. But
we are not Digital Foundry.
No, we are not.
I think one last point just on, why do we think it might have changed is we talk a little, we have spoken a bit about it on this podcast, that Steam has a discoverability problem, that the amount of games that come out on Steam makes it impossible. Like, I actually don't think Steam are in a position where they could design something that would work for everyone. There's just too much on that platform. But Nintendo never tried with the eShop. Like, the eShop launched in one state, and I think it got an update for the first time this month or last month, where the first time they've ever done anything to it. The main thing is they made it red instead of orange.
Love
and
that.
they made a minor change to the way that charts work. But the eShop is a piece of shit, and it has not helped that it's now full of AI generated slop and hentai match 3 puzzle games. So it makes it even harder to find things on there. And there was that trick that I think they tried to fix, but it didn't work, where if you put your game on for like 50 quid and then reduced it down to £1, it would shoot to the top of the charts, because they would assume that meant that it was a massive discount. But yeah, it's interesting. I think it's interesting that there is this general vibe between us that things did change with it, and the Steam Deck probably is the main reason why that changed, even though I'd be curious to see if that's how the wider general public would feel about it, although probably not, because they've got better things to think about than the things that we do as a gaming collective.
That is the issue, isn't it?
Just to wrap up a little bit with some thoughts about the Switch 2, because I guess we're legally obligated to, because it's a new handheld that's out this week, or last week. Thinking about the Switch 2 as an indie machine, and maybe some handhelds in general. But with the Switch 2, what I'm really interested in is that Nintendo are clearly trying to flex their indie credentials in all of their marketing in a way that I find really interesting. So I know I mentioned some games that came out the first 2 years before. They're really, really trying to remind you that you probably played those games on Switch 1, now that sequels are on their way. So there's parallels with a few games here. You've got Undertale and Deltarune, which is out on the day the Switch comes out, Hades and Hades 2, Hollow Knight, Silk Song, Enter the Gungeon 2, and Fast RMX and Fast Fusion, those racing games. That's getting a sequel on launch day. And Nintendo were really, really trying to push that in all their initial reveal marketing of, hey, look at all these sequels to games you played here. Like, I'm sure if Concerned Ape let them talk about Haunted Chocolatier, they absolutely would have jumped on that. But yeah, I think it'll be business as usual with the Switch 2, honestly, with indies. I think all publishers are absolutely going to release games on the eShop, and they're probably still going to release games for Switch because there's 150 million of those things floating around there.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Why wouldn't they?
That's what I was saying at the top, right? Very few things aren't going to be cross-gen for a while by the looks of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like some things that I think if it was on a PlayStation or an Xbox, everything's an Xbox now, which means nothing's an Xbox. But if it's on PlayStation, things that would have been trying to entice you into buying the next PlayStation by not releasing on the last gen, the equivalent on Switch is going back to Switch for a long time from what I've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, there's very little when I looked into what I'm slated to cover really for the next year that wasn't going to be on the Switch as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question actually. Just like, do you mind if I throw in a question?
I'd love you to. Absolutely,
go for it.
I am curious as to people who have a docked original Switch.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is like your playtime handheld versus TV? Because that's always like a really spicy question, surprisingly, between Switch players, I find.
75% docked, 25% handheld for me. That's because it makes my hands go numb when I use it in handheld.
Right.
And I just don't like it. But Steam Deck doesn't have that problem because it's bigger, and I think it's more better for my hands. But it's weird. I do play it mainly docked, probably because Yoli and I play a lot of games together on Nintendo platforms. So therefore, we're going to want it on a big TV, even though it looks like ass on a 4K TV, because that thing is not equipped for that.
Oh, it does a little bit, doesn't it? Actually, yeah, when we got our...
Smeary. Real smeary and washed out. But yeah. Oh, well, Rachel, you only have a light, right? So I guess you can only play it handheld.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, right. I wasn't clear whether you had a docked and then a light, or whether you just had the light.
Just have the light. I think...
Fair enough.
My thought process that we've been chatting... So a lot of the marketing around the Switch 2 has been indie games.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'd say maybe at least 50%.
What Nintendo games are coming out the same day as the Switch 2? Like, what are their launch games?
It's a really interesting question. Mario Kart World.
And...
Oh, that's it.
Well, this is where I'm coming from. I just feel like, of course, they're going to do that then.
Yeah,
I think for me, my problem is throughout consoles' relationship with indie games have been used for one thing: packaging. What can we use? Like, here's our big game. We need something else. Shove a bunch of indies in there. And because indie games are like, please notice us, it's less these days. But like the PlayStation has done it, and the Xbox have happened with that. And like every time, I think I'm a bit jaded actually, but like every time I always see like, oh yeah, like, I just don't know. I just feel like...
No, go off. I think it's a really good point.
Would that happen if you had... like an actual, I'm sure it would, but I feel like they feel the need to do that. Maybe I do feel like I'm speaking out of my depth here, but like I do feel like would they still give the same attention if they had big games coming out on it? And I do think they would. I don't think they would, because it's about how many, right? It's about how much is coming out. I just, yeah, because I don't know.
No, you're onto something there. I actually think that's
I'm thinking out as I go.
That's a really interesting. You're not wrong. Indie games have been used as padding. That's literally when I was talking before.
Yeah, I just want to give it a good go, because I honestly, when it comes to talking about like consoles and AAA, I can be really fucking negative. So I'm trying my best to be like as balanced as possible, because we've had such a really interesting discussion about the Switch and Switch 2. And that, like, I think I came into it like being like, oh yeah, but it hasn't changed, and I don't know why. I think I'm just a bitter, jaded person.
No, I don't think you are. I'm really glad you've said that. I think there's an interesting conversation to be had here about...
I can't just be happy.
Console, but it comes with like... you're right. They're used as padding. You're not wrong.
I just feel a bit
like.
Would you give this attention? to Deltarune, maybe Deltarune, because again, these are big indies, so they've chosen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And indie games have gotten way more popular recently, so it is quite safe to put that in your advertising and marketing these days.
Yeah.
You know, there is actually something that I almost forgot down at the bottom of my notes here, but I think it is worth bringing up, that the place where the Switch actually, because like you say, the thing with the indies on Switch is they tend to be the big, safe indies largely, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Sure.
And a place where I think the Switch actually shines in a weird way is it is still the place where if you have kind of a niche Japanese game that would not get a release in like globally in English, unless there was some indie publisher working in Europe or America who bought the rights to it and then released it just on Switch and PC. Like, that's how I get so many of my, like, weird little Japanese games. And, you know, those often are coming from actually bigger publishers in Japan, but they are treated like indies for the purposes of a global release.
Of the audience.
And I think that if there's anywhere that it's still, it's not indie, but it's like a very weird, it's kind of its own category in my opinion. But I'm thinking, about, we talked about it earlier, Paranormal Site, which is a freaking Square Enix game, but was given this treatment. And I'm replaying at the moment Buster Fellows, which is another really good example of, like, it's also got a Switch 2 sequel coming out, which is, like, I don't think a coincidence.
Does it? I did not know that.
Oh my God, Rachel. It does,
Those are the Tommy girlies. They're coming through.
Exactly. Yeah, see, that's what I'm thinking though. And I think there was what was it, last year as well? Oh, if I could remember.
Why isn't Buster Fellows 2 in the Switch Direct trailer? Or why isn't that there?
This is the thing. This is the interesting part, right? You have things like when Square Enix when there was the direct where Paranormal Site was announced, it was cut from the English language version
which is
of
wild.
the direct, even though it was coming out, and it's Unicorn Overlord is the other one I'm trying to think of. So, you know, like,
that one.
That's like a slightly odd, like, who is that even by?
Unicorn Overlord is the one where I was like, it would be instantly better if all the men were women and the women were men. Like, the character designs. That's the one where I was like, it works for every single character.
Yeah.
Sorry, just
I'm slightly misremembering that. That's never had a PC release, but it is across all consoles. But it's that sort of like, that sort of vibe of things that you just would not, like, specifically, I think, Japanese games that wouldn't, like, come over unless the Switch was there as kind of a cipher for it to happen. And I still think that is a thing that the Switch is doing that kind of no other platform has really touched on.
Yeah, but is that because of the scale? Like, is there still something here about, like, well, is it only because it sold 150 million? Like, there's probably a situation. Oh God, this is baseless. Everything I've said is baseless.
Same,
like,
girl. Same is how I feel. I'm just like,
vibes-based industry commentary. I love it.
Yeah, true.
It's the same as any industry commentary as far as I'm concerned. It's all vibe-based. No one's an expert. It's just toys, guys. Like, this sold 150 million units. I don't think we would have seen all the Ace Attorney re-releases if the Switch didn't exist. Like, if the Switch hadn't sold 150 million, if it sold 4 million, Capcom wouldn't have done more than the first 3. Yeah. There would be nowhere where that happens.
Yeah, I think it's maybe borderline for the mainline series, but I think definitely for the spin-offs. They were so reluctant to do anything with Ace Attorney Investigations, and they pushed that so hard for the Switch, right? Like, it's all been pushed for the Switch, even though I think a lovely bonus has been making it, like, cross-platform, so it hopefully doesn't get buried in another, like, development hell cycle being associated with one ecosystem. Where is the home?
The home for indies is PC. It always has been, right?
Yeah.
There's no question about that. But is there any situation in which any company can elevate indies in a way that would feel less is exploitive the right word? Maybe not.
Yeah, I know what you mean though. And I don't know if there is.
I think Nintendo are very, they do their indie directs and they're very good at promoting indie games, but they're still very careful and selective, the same as PlayStation and Xbox. Yeah. Like, Skin Deep isn't a launch game on Switch 2, right? Like,
what the fuck?
There's not. Yeah, come on, Shigsy. Like, but there's still, like, when I was saying those games before that are like, you know, Deltarune and Hades 2, like, it still feels very safe. It still feels like, well, this worked, so push these. Not like, here's 5 weird Nubby's Number Factories coming to Nintendo Switch 2. Like, they're still being quite careful. And, well, maybe is that the conclusion of this podcast, is capitalism bad?
Well, I mean, that's what it comes back to, isn't it? Like, of course they would. Just like screaming into the void. Because the alternatives are Steam and the Steam Deck, which we talked about, is whatever. I mean, the mobile market and like with apps like Netflix now gobbling up indies, that's a pretty great way to play indie games. But then if we're talking about like an indie platform with curated selection of indie games by big indie developers like Lucas Pope and the Katamari guy, Playdate is the obvious one. But that price point, baby. But it's also like, I don't know. It's like,
how much?
I want to love the $240, not including postage, tax, Trump's stupid tariffs. If you want a nice case for it, and then you have to pay for some of the games on top of that. But there's seasons as well. I'm not quite sure. So like, that's Panic's console. Like Panic, we're talking about Goose Game and stuff. Like Panic have released an indie platform for indie devs to make indie games, and I don't know that. I haven't bought one of those, and I love it. Like, I love indie games. So it's very, I think you have to give the Switch its flowers after our conversation, because what else?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately that's the thing, is so much in the games industry at the moment has me in this mindset where it's like, on the one hand, are indies being used to like bolster platforms to sell the big AAAs? Like, that's definitely a legitimate perspective, but equally it's that, you know, indie developers want to get paid too, and being able to be included in the list with some big AAAs, and like, it's bound to, like you say, there are bound to be people who bought a Switch for Breath of the Wild and then were like, Stardew Valley looks great, and now love Stardew Valley way more than Breath of the Wild, and that will have been so many people's story. And like, I feel like if you're an indie dev who, you know, wants to be able to make games full time, that's kind of a dream scenario. I mean, I know we're going way back to when we talked about, you know, we did episodes ages ago about like success in indies and like, what does that look like? And it's always a double-edged sword, right? Because it's sort of like that tipping point where it's like, you're kind of not indie anymore after a certain point of success, of like units sold, of like finding a publisher and platforms with more exposure. And it's, you know, there's and again, what you end on is there's no perfect system under capitalism in which you can be like creative and original and like free to express everything that you want to express in the art and the entertainment that you make, and also like be able to actually, you know, pay rent and buy food while doing it. This got big. This got really big at the end.
I'm glad it did. That's what I love about this podcast, is we do have the conversations. I think you're right, Rachel. I think the Playdate is the only indie console. I'm just looking at it now, and like,
I guess it's like the parameters you work with. Like, if we're working with Playdate, probably should I say, but because of a bunch of different reasons, like money being a big one, it probably is. I don't know. But then, I mean, on Steam Deck has Linux, and like we touched upon, you can play any games on the Steam Deck. So surely that's the indie console, because you can literally play your own like made games made by other people on itch. You can load whatever. So is that the indie console? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Also,
like PSA, the main thing is like every indie game that I load up on Steam Deck that isn't like supported by a major publisher, it'll come up with like a bunch of warnings like this, you know, like orange warning might not work, and like it's generally fine. It's like, there might be a slight resolution issue, but don't be put off if you own a Steam Deck and the like it is a place that you can play your indies 100%. Like quite comfortably.
I think for me as well, like the Playdate is also indie because of the crank. And this is something that I feel Nintendo lost, is this like being innovative with its tech, because there's so many like small developers can just like, I mean, the 3DS and DS had so many weird fucking games on them, because that will be lost to time. But it's like, they were so interesting because of the way they used the tech, whether that be like the two screens or the 3D-ness or like, I just think part of like Playdead's appeal as an indie system is the fact that there is a crank attached to it. Like, you're not going to find innovative indies on any other console, including PC, because it's only going to be on the Playdate. And I just feel like this is not innovative in terms of tech. Like, there's nothing fun or playful, like you said, Liam, about this console.
The thing is, you are holding a Switch Lite, which took everything that was unique about the Switch and removed it in favor of making another Nintendo handheld, which is like, I do think that the Joy-Cons were super, like, I remember what a big deal the Joy-Cons were with like Nintendo Labo when Switch was being announced. Like, that was cool and innovative. You forget because it's been 8 years and now it just feels like another controller and it's kind of like lost its shine. And like, I'm not entirely convinced that the mouse thing they've got going for Switch 2 is going to be anything
what
like
is up with that?
I think Rachel's point about there not being playful applies 100% to Switch 2.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Because a handheld hybrid console, home console, was innovative. That was magic. That was like, that's Nintendo. That's Nintendo's design thinking.
Super was, yeah.
And then them being like, oh yeah, now it's got magnets in the Joy-Cons. £400, please. Is like, oh, come on, you made the Wii U. You put your own social network in that thing, you absolute lunatics. And now you're trying to say that the UI in this one's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I just missed that.
I completely agree.
I mean, even the name Switch 2 does not fill me with confidence for the way that they're like positioning it as like a little bit. Nintendo, like you say, they don't really do that. Even the Wii U moved things along from the Wii further than this has moved things along from the original Switch.
This was for me, but now it's for you, was what they tried to say when they announced the Wii U. And everyone around the world groaned collectively.
Yeah, it's not great. But yeah, I mean, it does make me think, actually just the idea of like something with the power of a home console that was completely portable was super revolutionary in like 2016. And the detachable Joy-Cons and the way that those could be like one player, two player games was like a big deal. And like, as you say, Rachel, it deserves its flowers, but I do think Switch 2 is like the safest console that they've done in a really long time, and it's weird.
Why didn't they call it Super Nintendo Switch? I know why they didn't. It's because no one realized the Wii U was another console, and they're so terrified of that happening again. Because everyone was like, oh, the gamepad is just something you buy for the Wii, and 4 people bought the Wii U. I was one of them. So I know why they're like, this is 2. This is another one. Buy this one. Because they tried to do new Nintendo 3DS, didn't they? And the same thing happened there as well. And everyone was like, oh, there's just a new one.
Yeah.
No, like,
why
is it just Nintendo consoles?
New 3DS XL.
What I think they could have helped themselves with was not making the Switch 2 box look exactly like the Switch box if they wanted that to not be like, so many grandparents this Christmas are buying the wrong one. I can tell you that in advance.
Yes.
Yeah, why have they done that? That's a really good point.
Oh God, no. We had a conversation about this at work the other day and we're like, it's just, I understand branding. I understand that Nintendo is red. We all understand that Nintendo is red and Xbox is green and PlayStation is blue, and everyone's kind of stuck with that now. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you could have done like just not put like a rather small 2 next to the exact same logo on the exact same color on the exact size and shape box.
We should wrap up this conversation and move on.
Sorry, I guess so.
No, because I also want to contribute with my thing that irritates me about the Switch 2 is that branding wise, the simplicity of the Switch 1 was when they did that like, click.
Oh yeah,
click thing.
That was cute.
It went, and then you had the 2 Joy-Cons move together and it said Nintendo Switch. Now the Joy-Con does that, and then just a 2 appears next to it. And it's like, that's bad branding. That's bad branding.
They couldn't
Change
even have like the little mouse draw out the 2.
Or just turn the right Joy-Con into the 2. So you've got the left Joy-Con and the 2 next to it, and it still has the form factor of the Switch.
There's 2 better ideas right there for free, Nintendo.
I'm a software designer, I'm not even a graphic designer. Super Nintendo Switch, and fucking right. Anyway, they're bad. I'm going to cancel my pre-order. Anyway, shall we move on?
Both pre-orders are just the one.
Any last thoughts about indie games and Nintendo? I'm assuming not from Rachel, who looks like all the light has left her eyes from this conversation.
I'm trying to think. I don't know because
Stardew Valley 2, and they'll sell 200 million units.
I think as a portable console for indie games, it is good. And it probably is the best. I'm just always concerned. Like, I don't even know what is the cut that devs get on the Switch, like, is like, I don't even know that. I don't even know how easy it is to port your game to the Switch. I don't know how easy it is to make games for the Switch. Like, all these questions, I'm seriously like out of my league when I'm talking about like indies on this console, because I know so little about how they are made specifically for this console and whether that will, all those problems, will that carry on to the Switch too? Like, how accessible is this console for developers making indie games? I think that's my big question. And since I don't know that, I'm just going to be like, oh.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a good point.
I know that there is the controversy of like the approvals process is quite stringent for getting, which is why, because a lot of indies I play like
makes no sense, by the way, considering there was an unpacking clone on the eShop and the developer had to chase Nintendo to be like, this is copyright infringement. Can you get rid of it?
I've seen people say this because I know like games that I really enjoyed on PC that then got switched, like Monster Prom, like Dream Daddy, things that were like early visual novels for me on PC that then went on to Switch later, have said like their approval system was so stringent. There's like even Monster Prom, they had to the first game they had to actually rewrite a whole plot line before Nintendo would let them release it on the Switch. So there is like a console version that is materially different in one storyline because it referenced heavy drug use in a way that Nintendo were not going to allow on their platform.
Nintendo!
But it's just interesting. And then people are saying like, well, why did I have to go through like literally 6 months of rewrites of my game? And then there's an unpacking clone and there are like AI hentai games. And like, what is the rationale here? So I think that's a big concern for indie developers going into Switch 2. It's like, you know, if you're going to have these very, very hardcore content restrictions, apply them. Like, why legitimate artists are being kind of like cut out of being able to release easily, and then shovelware's going on? Like, what the hell?
Look, they just need to release another Nintendogs game and I'll absolutely buy the shit out of that console. That's all I need to do to win me over. Please, Nintendo! Please!
But that Nintendogs game does need to have a story in it about heavy drug use to make up for the...
You know, it's funny because it's the werewolf character who gets heavy into drugs in Monster Prom.
Is it?
So, like...
Doggy.
There's a little bit of crossover there. I think there could be like you guys should talk to each other, see if you can't...
Come on,
can't make that happen.
Oh, Liam's gone.
Have we lost Liam?
Yeah.
All right.
Liam, come in.
Oh God.
Hello, listener. My computer exploded and shrapnel went everywhere. And as I Neo-style moved around the shrapnel as it's plugged into the walls, my computer stopped recording. That was the only bad thing that happened. So if it felt like that last section just ended suddenly, it's not because Rachel slammed her fist on the table and went, enough. This is secretly a AAA episode and I won't stand for it on our podcast. She cottoned on. She called me out.
Hey, who's said Nintendogs so many times? Like, I feel like if it was a AAA episode, it was Rachel's doing on this occasion.
The AAA exception.
I will always break our indie rule to beg for a Nintendogs game. There's nothing I wouldn't do for a Nintendogs game.
Oh my God.
Wow.
You want to let's... Right, hyperfixations. Let's say them. Let's speak them out loud. Who wants to go first? Rachel?
My headphone's running out of charge. What's that?
Oh no!
Oh my God! It's all fucking happening.
Disaster after disaster over here today.
This is actually this is classic us. This is like the first 15 episodes of this podcast.
It'll be fine.
Season 0 energy up in here.
Will it be fine? Are we going to go really long on hyperfixations? You never know with us.
Mine is short. Mine will be short.
Okay.
You go first then, Rebecca. No, Rachel, fuck.
No, Rachel,
kill me?
Rachel?
Can someone kill me? Please?
My hyperfixation is the alters, which when this episode comes out, the embargo should be up maybe 2 or 3 hours earlier, so I'm right on time with this one. I also will have a review up on Games Radar if you'd like to read more about that. But this game is great. This game is so good. It's by 11-Bit Studios, who did This War of Mine and Frostpunk and Frostpunk 2. This is not one they've published. This is in-house. And yeah, I played the demo, like a year ago. Really enjoyed it. And was thankfully offered to do the review for Games Radar, which I'm very thankful. Shout out to Oscar. But yes, The Alters is a game about a man who is on a space mission. His whole crew gets killed off in the process of landing on this planet. He then has to run the the space shuttle by himself, and there's incoming radiation storm, which is likely going to wipe the last bit of his survival off the face of the planet. So as a last resort, he clones himself multiple times to create a crew of people to man the ship. And yeah, it's a base builder, so you are building up the spaceship. It's a resource management game. You have to gather the resources to survive. But what makes this game fantastic, as always, is that 11-bit have managed to find, once again, the humanity in the situation. In this War of Mine, it was pitch perfect in terms of like the story that it told with the survivors of war. In Frostpunk 2, it was a story about the people of London in a post-apocalypse situation surviving and the stories that came with that. And it's the same with this one. This guy, Jan, I love him so much. Every time he clones himself, the way the game kind of presents it is that if you're on your ship and you need a medic, you jump into the machine that lets you look at different timelines of Jan's life, and you get to pick a timeline in which he becomes a medic, and then you bring that clone into existence.
Oh,
that's fun.
That's so cool.
So the way that you kind of get this labor force is by creating clones of yourself that are you, but have made different decisions, and thus comes this tension of like this. Oh my god, the first clone you make is a technician. And there's a very pivotal point in your history where you were living with your mum and your dad was abusive. You left, but this technician decided to stay, and both the life paths that you both made because of that, and it made you the people you are. And It's just so interesting. And this whole conversation about cloning, it's tackled head on. This first guy is like, why did you bring me into existence? Why am I here? And you're like, I was either going to die, or I needed you to survive. And this clone is like, so you're using me as a tool, and now what? You're done with me? Like, what? So it's not even the case of like, okay, it's just gamifying this very like sci-fi, like this sci-fi trope. 11-bit are like taking this very, very complicated idea of cloning and what that means and what it would mean for you to meet yourself, but from a person who's made different decisions, some better than you made and some worse than you made, like, and just like talk with them. And yeah, okay, they help you out with the ship, but 11-bit again make it very important that you don't just meet them and they're just gone. Like, they are a constant throughout your journey. You keep you keep returning to them, and you share like memories with them. Like, oh, do you remember when like Mum used to make us this dish? Or look, I found a lava lamp that we really like. And it's just really great playing a game in which, yeah, I love the base building and resource management, even though those two aren't really my cup of tea, especially base building. But I just know that this studio is going to give me such a good story. And it's a really good story. I've not finished it yet, but I feel like it's ramping up. I'm getting to the very end. And I'm just loving it. I just think I love all these different clones. They are so different, and some of them are really fucked up. And it just deals with different situations of like, oh, I just love, it's just so rich. With different ethical situations, emotional situations. Oh my god, because in one timeline you don't split up with your wife, and so what does that mean? In this timeline you do. In another timeline you like, it's just like you can't help but reflect on your own life and your own decisions and choices that you would have made and what those would have looked like for you. And I just love it. I think it's a really, really smart game. And yeah, the base building and the resource management is great. It's, 11-bit have been doing this for years at this point. They are just absolute like masterclass in those two. But yeah, they always manage to really like back up these interesting scenarios with like a good story. And that's where like, I love it so much. So yeah, The Alters, it's out now, today. Go check it out. And I think the demo will be there as well. So yeah, play it.
I'm really happy you've played this. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you have, because you are an 11-bit stan. But this one, I was really unsure about this one because I felt like they didn't show a huge amount off when it was first revealed. I think it was just a CGI trailer, which is always a bit of like a question mark for me. And in the run-up, I just felt like I wasn't hearing much about it. But I've just been watching some trailers there while you were chatting and hearing you talk about it and describe what it actually is. I think I actually understand it now, and I think that was maybe the piece that was missing. But it looks fantastic. It looks so, so cool. I really need to check this out.
Yeah, it's Mickey 17 if everyone was our Robert Pattinson. So the best part of the movie.
Mickey 17, but good.
Yes.
Oh, I
literally.
like Mickey 17.
Hey, that's the dynamic now. One person has to be a hater in the trio, or one person has to like the thing,
yes.
and that's been our thing this year.
That's how we get our audience. Everyone's covered. Everyone's covered.
Exactly. It's like Minority Report.
Oh, the three people in the pool.
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Right. That took me a sec. Sorry, I had to pull back 20 years of memories. I was like, I do know this.
Wait, does everyone else not constantly think about Minority Report? Like all the time?
How often do you think about Minority Report?
Daily.
Daily?
I constantly think about how in a situation with three people, how often you'll have like sort of that dynamic of people.
Right,
well, someone has to be like, and here is the devil's advocate position on that. I think we do that quite a lot on this podcast, to be fair.
Oh,
like,
we are the trope.
respectfully.
The three-person trope, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the 2002 Tom Cruise film Minority Report is your Roman Empire. Is that what we're learning here in real time?
Well, not so much the film as the original short story as well. So just like the idea.
Jesus Christ.
That's more niche.
Yes.
It is more niche.
Every day.
I will shock you. The book is, I may be exaggerating with every day, but like pretty regularly.
Every
It's like, it's my...
It's a reference you pull from.
Yeah, exactly. When there is this situation, whenever there is a unevenly weighted like difference of opinion, Minority Report is like what my brain reaches to as a way of being like, because they were all friends, they all got on, but like
were they close?
One always had. I don't know actually. That's what I'm thinking. Or were they genetically modified, like
things?
People who just got like snatched off the street. That's usually the other vibe of that, isn't it? Like in sci-fi.
Of all the things to think of Minority Report about, sorry, I've got hands behind. We'll go hands behind.
We're all there.
It's my thinking pause.
It's a relaxing pose.
Arrested.
If someone's
Minority Report
on the ground.
Minority Report
on the ground.
I feel like if someone said like, hand-based user interface, I think of Minority Report. Solving crimes before they happen, Minority Report. Tom Cruise getting his eyes cut out and replaced. I think that's Minority Report.
Ooh.
But the fact that you think of like an interesting dynamic between three people and your brain goes to Minority Report, that's such a Rebecca thing. That's so funny.
That's interesting. I don't know.
My hyperfixation is that you think about Minority Report every day.
Oh God, this is definitely one where I've thrown out like a joking answer, and now I have it to define my personality for the rest of my life, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Just with me, I'm going to be the one that everyone else will forget about this, but I'm going to think about it every day.
That I'm really into Minority Report. I'm really into Wedding Witch. These are definitely things that form a genuine cornerstone of my personality outside of this podcast.
Well, we will do it. It's me, the Peggle boy, and over here, Goofy Girl.
Yay!
Well, now I have two things, so everyone else has to pick another one. Homework for this episode.
I'm not deep enough to have. Oh, we'll come back. We'll circle back. We won't circle back. But while Rebecca, what's your hyperfixation?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, my hyperfixation.
Hey.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm just like dying inside and outside at the same time. It's quite an interesting experience. Like, just
Aren't we all?
Complete ego and physical death at the same time. Anyway.
Lucky. I think about ego death once a week. That's my Minority Report is the thought of ego death and how I can achieve it.
We're games media. We all think about ego death at least once a week. That's just what we do.
I'm out of the rat race. I shouldn't still be thinking about ego death.
Well, that's why it's only once a week. Anyway.
How to break the habit.
What the fuck is happening? What do I do? It's not even worth really
My headphones are beeping, but I'm not plugging them in.
Have you all heard of a little game called Baldur's Gate 3? Because that's my hyperfixation this week. That's like so boring to me. But
sounds,
I really
sounds good.
Really needed a comfort game over the bank holiday weekend, and I recently finished Ghostwire Tokyo. I recently platinumed Ghostwire Tokyo, which for a long time was my, like, you know, one of my favourite games of the past few years, just like a big warm hug game, and I've platinumed it, and I've got like kind of nothing else to do with it now, so I went back to Baldur's Gate 3, which I realised I hadn't played in slightly over a year, which is kind of shocking, considering like how into it I was for that first like 8 months. So yeah, I've restarted my save, and I just had that experience when you go back to a game that you've really built up in your mind as like a great game, like, you know, proper like genre defining, like decade defining. And it is actually that good. I'm super pleased to report that as soon as I was back in
Still good.
I was like, oh yeah, this game is legit. This is not, you know, this is not just like hype and the kind of echo chamber of the industry that gave it all these accolades. Actually, that came out from a place of like something very real, because this game is awesome. So yeah, I'm about 8 hours into the new save. I got a little bit sidetracked by a couple of other things, so I haven't played it in about a week, but I'm playing it on Steam Deck, so that's exciting because it does mean that I can't do anything for more than 2 hours without having to go and plug it in, which is probably good, to be honest, because it does make sure that I actually do other stuff with my life, because I would just play this game constantly. Yeah, I'm just really enjoying it. It's like I didn't finish it the first time. I got about halfway through, I think, my first playthrough. But it's been really liberating to get a fresh save that's like not my work save, much as I kind of loved what I had going on in that save. That's like I was working through that like, you know, guides work and whatever in that save, and it's just really nice to like go back and just like have that experience, have a bit of knowledge, like just enjoy the world and the characters and the story. Little bit worried that I've biffed Astarion's romance, but I'm sure I can bring him back round. It's all going to be good.
Oh,
it's
no.
all going to be fine.
Good.
It's fine. As soon as he wants to like chomp on me, I'm just like, yeah, bite my neck as many times as you want. I don't care. And that approval's going to tick up and up and up. And up.
You're just ripping off your shirt like, ah!
Yeah, that was always
I'm not
my
hungry.
joke. That's always my favourite joke with Astarion, is there's a bit at about the halfway point of the game where if you're romancing him, there's like a really sweet and sincere scene where he's like, you know, I was kind of like just using you because I felt really threatened in this situation. You seem like a person who could like handle themselves, but like I've started to really develop feelings for you. And I'm like, oh my God, same. Like this is just a total goof romancing you because like the joke is that you're a vampire lawyer and it was a joke with my friends. But now actually I really like your storyline. So like that's not a dialogue option, which is a shame because that is exactly that is exactly how I felt. I was like,
that.
Someone mod that in for Rebecca, please.
Yes. I was like, genuinely, I was going to bounce to Karlak when she got annoying, but actually I'm really invested now. So.
Happy you're enjoying it, babes.
Yeah, I'm glad you're back
having
into
a good time. And like, it does, you know, I know we're not into like super retrospective territory, but so far, 2 years down the line, it does hold up. So that's nice.
Fuck off, 2 years?
Nearly.
Fuck. That was 2023, wasn't it?
Yeah. August 2023.
Oh.
Yeah.
Was 1.0.
That Games Media killed that game for me. I already have a bit of a toxic trait from being, I guess, a white man who was on the internet in the mid-2000s, where if something gets too popular, I have to really fight against a part of me that's like, don't like it. You shouldn't like it now. It's too popular.
Yeah.
And I already had that a bit with Baldur's Gate, but it got amplified because I had to play so much of it for review as I was trying to leave Games Media. So it was complicated anyway, as it was.
Yes.
But then all my friends got it and played it casually and normally and loved it. And it just made me really grumpy. I was like, oh, fucking well, I think it's shit, actually, because you like it and I didn't play it in a normal way. So I do need to go back and play it because, you're right. Of course it's good. Like
it's good.
It actually
deserves
to be by some metrics the most accoladed game ever.
Yeah,
I think,
by the only metric that matters, which is you saying it to me. I'm like, yes. If Rebecca thinks it, then it's right. If it's of course it's the most accoladed.
Not at all biased by the fact that I like a really chunky RPG with a lot of romance options. Like, you know, that's just my opinion is objective.
With a sexy vampire, a sexy boy.
Sexy vampire boy and on fire wife.
Smoked by the campfire.
I miss her. I'm going to have to do... I'm doing another save soon so I can romance Karlak on save too.
You're coming for her next.
Oh, yeah. I love her so much. I love her.
Nice.
The guy who voiced Astarion voiced Heisenberg in Resident Evil Village, right?
He did, yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Has anyone done that bit yet of the Heisenberg voice for Astarion? Like, oh, nice neck, want to bite it?
Oh my god. In fairness, I think if you asked Neil Newborn, he would probably do it. He seems
Surely
to.
he would.
He's in a lot of indie projects, actually. I don't know if you know.
Yeah,
he's in Date Everything.
Oh, really?
He's in Fallout London. He got in touch with the Fallout London people and was like, "Can I be a voice in your mod?" And they were like, "Who the fuck is this?" And then they were like, "Oh my god, what? Who?"
Yeah. Oh, Vault Boy. Nice bomb. It's not Ethan Winters.
I love Heisenberg. So I was delighted when I found out that was the same VA.
Oh.
Yeah,
Heisenberg's
I love
so
him as
good.
well.
I think you like him more than like him. Wink.
I like him more than Lady Dimitrescu. Everyone was thirsting over, and they were
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
"You're gonna have your queer card taken away if you don't." I'm just like, she's just mean. Heisenberg is like fun, so you know.
Yeah.
Hot take. He's the
Why
hot
not both?
one.
That is a hot
Yeah, well,
take.
I mean, why not both? But also, she's so mean. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah," and I'm like, "She stabbed you. She just straight up stabbed you the first time you met her. What the hell?"
And
It's a bit too much for me personally. It's a bit much.
problem.
And I let her do it again.
Yeah.
Stab me!
Stop stabbing me. Oh,
I'm personally very into romantic encounters that are survivable, but that's like, that's just me.
Speak for yourself.
Oh. Right, Liam. I'm fixation,
Yeah, go on,
please.
Liam.
For the love of God.
I don't know. Look, I've been working so hard without any time off. I've found no joy in anything recently.
Oh,
Love that. Love that.
What am I? Okay, I'm nearly finished Expedition 33. Good game. It's too long. It just keeps going on. This isn't a spoiler. Is it a spoiler? No, it's not a spoiler. It comes up epilogue and then it says Act 3. That should be illegal. Don't do that to me. That's not what an epilogue is.
It's not an epilogue.
mean.
Yeah,
Isn't that mean?
That's rough.
So I'm nearly done with it and I've loved it. I do think it's a genuine 10 out of 10. But I've been playing a few things and nothing's really got me. Been playing a bit of Old Skies, that new Wadjet Eye game with Yoli. And we're 5 hours in, and it's a classic point and click in the broken sword mold, in that it's kind of plodding and interesting, but not that exciting. And I don't hate it for that, but we need to stick with it, I think.
I feel like I've seen you playing that a lot. But
Yeah. It's a lot of just walking between rooms and being like, well, which person do I have to talk to progress the story?
yeah. Oh, that's a classic point and click. All right, Rachel's face confirms what I already knew. That was a classic point and click.
The one thing that is keeping me going through it is that your companion, your helpline person, 'cause I don't know if you know what Old Skies is about. Basically, it's about, I wasn't even going to talk about this, but it's about time traveling. So you play an agent who lets rich people time travel and you keep them safe and make sure they don't affect the timeline too much, which is an interesting concept for a point and click. But you're I guess companion in the present day who helps you with tips and you just talk to about things is the same guy who voices Grimoire from Tangle Tower.
I'm going to play it.
Yeah, he's good. Yoli was I think his voice is hot. And I'm like, is his voice hot? There's something to it. But I don't know if is it an attractive voice?
There's only one disappointed voice for me.
Yeah.
Yes, that was an indescribable movement you just did there, Rachel. She's, of course, referring to the disembodied voice of Alphonse Harding from...
and the sensual
I'm a
dance
Beast.
that Rachel does in response to it. We just discovered.
Ruined it with the Heisenberg voice. Nice voice. Oh. But really, I think my only happy fixation at the moment is we finally got Now TV, and I've just been watching a bunch of HBO shows that we haven't been watching. First of all, one of my happy fixations is how fucking terrible Now TV is. You've got to pay £8 a month for 720p streaming with ads in the year of our Christ 2025. You got to pay an extra £6 on top to watch things in 1080p.
Ew.
Ew, no.
And even more if you want to watch it in 4K. So that makes me angry every time I go on it.
Yeah.
But we've watched the first season of White Lotus. Turns out White Lotus is good.
Nice.
Who knew?
Yes.
It's 4 years after that first season came out, but very, very fun. Finally finished Succession. Watched the final season of Succession. My God, what a perfect bit of TV Succession is.
So fucking good.
Oh, and the final season just ramps it right up to 100%. Stellar performances by everyone. the ending couldn't have been more pitch perfect.
I'm the oldest boy!
Yeah.
I say that
God,
over me and Henry. I'm like, I'm the oldest boy!
My little vocal stim this week is I watched Conclave alone last week while Yoli was away, while eating Domino's pizza. Have you seen Conclave?
Yeah!
Yeah, there's a bit in it where Ray finds... Of course you have. Of course. It's the cuntiest movie ever made. I was thinking that as I was watching it. Just a bunch of old men quietly talking to each other in the Vatican.
The gossip. Oh,
it's so good. What a great movie.
Oh, it's so good.
Conclave is just Catholic Succession. That's basically what it is. There's a bit where Ray Fiennes is talking to someone and he goes, I don't want your vote. It's really in my head. It's just like a great line delivery.
Did you like the bit about the bit that gives me life is when they're having that massive argument and then the nun storms out and he just takes out his vape in the Vatican and starts smoking it.
The vaping cardinal.
The vaping cardinal is iconic.
I kind of wish he wasn't like a right-wing lunatic because otherwise the vaping cardinal would.
He's cunty as well.
My hyperfixation is Conclave. That should have been my hyperfixation.
Welcome.
Thank you. We got there. We got there in the end. It's so good, but not the actual Conclave like it was for you.
Oh no! Well, yeah. This one was better than the real one. I'm just kind of disappointed with the real one, except for was it Pizza Baller? Pizza Baller. But no,
Pizza Baller is my Minority Report. I think about that.
Yeah, no, the film is, I was disappointed with the actual real life. It's such a good movie. Yeah. So you watched that. Oh my God, you've watched some really amazing things. Loads. Christ.
And we've nearly finished the first season of The Rehearsal. You did not undersell it. That program has... I'm a mouth agape the whole time I'm watching that. It is one of the most interesting pieces of television ever made. And if I was the executive producer at HBO and Nathan Fielder showed me the first cut of that show, I'd be like, Nathan, what is this? We give you so much money. And when you described it, I thought it was like every episode was a different rehearsal. And it just isn't. He goes off He goes off immediately of what it's meant to be, and it just becomes his own thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
happy for you, babes.
Incredible. Yeah. HBO. Good. Thanks, everyone.
Done. Well, that's all the best TV ever. You're done. All the best TV I've said in the last couple of years. That you've said them all. White Lotus, Succession, and Rehearsal.
Yeah.
Oh,
although we did.
Is there another good TV show with us in the room? Is that no?
Hello.
No? Hello.
Anyway, with that tangent of a hyperfixation, we end our podcast about the Switch 2. I actually forgot. No, about the original Switch. I've forgotten what we spoke about already. Well, time for me to go to sleep forever. So thank you so much for listening, and we will be back in 2 weeks' time with. I don't know what our next episode's about. Do we know what our next episode's about?
It's going to be our roundup because it's about halfway through the year nearly. So I think we're going to be doing a little roundup of some Game of the Year contenders so far and having a bit of a look ahead at the second half of 2025.
My God. Woo! Can't believe it's finally that time again. But yes, we'll be back.
I mean, we're a bit early, but by the time the episode's out, we won't be, I guess, which is scary. I don't want it to be halfway through the year. I've still got I've got so much to do.
Yeah, I've got so much to play.
Yeah. I feel like I'm on top of everything, actually. I feel all right.
Congratulations. I'm really genuinely happy for you.
I'm
just crying.
I don't know where I found the time. That's what I keep thinking this year. I'm like, where am I finding the time to play these games? Like, how have I played 34 hours of Expedition 33 in 2 weeks?
Wait, you play 34 hours Expedition 33? Girl, that's 1 hour too many.
I know. I was a little bit disappointed when I realised that. And I played 18 hours of Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition and finished that.
Jesus Christ! And all the indies.
6 hours of Old Skies.
Stop
What am I doing? Yeah.
Stop now.
And it's only the expense of no one's seen me other than you two all year. I lost all my friends. My family think I'm dead.
Worth it.
Definitely worth it so I could be
on the pulse.
2 weeks late to talk about Skin Deep.
Oh.
Anyway, right. Thanks for listening. That's enough yapping. Love you all. Bye.
Bye.
Indiventure is a video games podcast created, produced, hosted, and edited by Rachel Watts, Rebecca Jones, and me, Liam Richardson. For more information, including a list of every game we mentioned in this episode, make sure to check out our website, indiventurepodcast.co.uk. You can get in touch by sending your questions, comments, and feedback to contact@indiventurepodcast.co.uk. You can support the show by rating us 5 stars and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast provider of choice. Some of the games we talk about on the show may have been provided to us for free for review consideration. Our intro music and stings were composed for us by Ollie Newbury. Check the episode description to hear more of his excellent tunes. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks for another episode of Indiventure. Bye for now.